and welcome to the strangest gig I have ever played. True Tales. From the studio and the stage, I am your host, Chris J. Norwood. Welcome. Our guest with us on the podcast today is one Rob Garner, a supremely talented bass player, and also the new publisher and editor of Buddy Magazine, the original Texas music magazine. So without further ado, let's get to it. Yes, welcome back to The Strangest Gig. Again, I'm your host, Chris J. Norwood. Before we dive in, I want to take a second to thank all of you listeners out there. Really appreciate you tuning in and supporting us. And it's a one-man show. I do everything. I book the guest, I record, I edit. And so it means a lot that you're listening. All you strange gig heads, strange giggers, whatever we want to call ourselves. There's one other thing that you could do to help out, and that's just tell a friend, spread the good word about what we're doing here. And we got a lot of cool stuff in the works, and I really want you to be a part of it. So yeah, help spread the word, tell a friend. If you yourself are a musician with a strange gig story, hit me up, and let's get you on the podcast. We'd love to hear it. Buddy Magazine has been around for over 50 years. Starting in 1972, it is the original Texas music magazine, spreading the good word about all things Texas music. I have been fortunate enough myself to have a little write-up in the magazine a couple years ago when my first album came out. And it was a really cool thing to be able to go to the store and pick up a physical copy and read my name in print. Buddy Magazine's new editor-in-chief is Rob Garner. Rob is, as I said, a really talented bass player, a really talented journalist. And we have a fun conversation about the importance of print journalism on the local scene and just what it looks like in today's world. And we also hear a really great story that Rob tells about a pretty harrowing gig that he saw at the old theater gallery in Deep Ellum. It's a pretty fun conversation, and I think you'll enjoy it. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Here is Rob Garner. Well, Rob Garner, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really look forward to our conversation. This will be a lot of fun. Let's jump in. Tell me about your current gig. I know you've got a couple of things going on. Like we were just talking about, you play bass now for Tutu Jones, and you're also the editor for Buddy Magazine. So let's continue the conversation with playing with Tutu. You said you've been doing that for a couple of years now, right?
Just here recently, a few months now, and we've got a few shows planned up. We're going to play the Cane and Win Blues Festival on February 1st, 2nd.
Okay, cool.
Port David's Pub coming right up, so that's going to be a lot of fun and looking forward to it.
And who else is in the band?
It's a trio right now. Charles Alexander is the drummer.
Okay.
And Tutu plays lead, rhythm, and bass all at once.
Yeah. And then what do you play for him?
I play bass.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought you play bass.
Yeah, it's like playing with a guy who's playing multiple levels. He's literally going in and out of playing the bass line, playing doubling or playing a rhythm thing and then going to a lead and back. And sometimes two different rhythm guitars,
So do y'all, are you doing the power trio, blues power trio kind of thing?
Yeah, that's what Tutu's been saying is his favorite way to go. And it makes sense to me because of that, kind of multiplicity of his guitar playing. He can just jump. He can't play, he typically doesn't like to have a rhythm guitar player with somebody because he
wants to do he's
jumping rails and but it works.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it works. So but getting another player kind of boxes him in. So the trio is he says allows him to open up a bit more.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then you said plans to record maybe in the near future?
Yeah, we're talking about doing some recording. Again, I'm sitting in with these gigs, so we'll see how far we keep going into the future, but there's some talk to do some new recording for sure.
Cool. Have you all talked studios yet or producers or anything?
Nothing
that
yet.
far yet?
Yeah.
That's so cool. And then, tell me a little bit more about your history as a bass player. I know you were you were one of the Texas Tornadoes for Buddy Magazine. So tell me a little bit about some of the other guys you've played with and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So the Buddy Texas Tornado Award is something that started in, I'll speak as a Texas Tornado for bass and as the person, kind of leading that. But it started in 1978 and the editors picked basically 6 guitarists. They realized that there's something different going on in Texas.
Yeah.
Texas wasn't getting the accolades from the national press, and so they kind of put a stake in the ground. They said, here's our here's our own Hall of Fame, and it was Jimmy Vaughn and
Yeah, of course.
Rocky Athas,
Yeah.
Eric Johnson, John Nitzinger, Bugs Henderson, a couple others. Amazing foresight.
Yeah.
Billy Gibbons, of course. He'd
sure.
been successful, but picking guitarists that were to become famous. That was kind of a hallmark of Buddy at the time. Called Stevie Ray Vaughan, second year Texas Tornado.
Wow.
So I was very honored to be named a Tornado in 2002.
Great.
I think there's about 550 tornadoes, and again, it runs the gamut. From those early blues rock and blues players to all styles. Very eclectic mix.
Chris Holt is a friend of mine. Had him on the podcast. I know he was recently awarded that.
Yes, he was, and deservedly so. Yeah,
absolutely.
We actually did a cover story on him. Oh, I think it was probably about a year ago. Actually.
Yeah.
Exactly a year ago. I've got it right.
Oh,
here
great.
in print for reference.
There it is. Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
So that's so cool.
Almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, and just I guess other playing history. Yeah, I started playing in bands in high school with my friends Doug and Mike and others, and then we started as teenagers, kind of making our way from the suburbs into the Deep Ellum warehouse district.
Yeah.
And kind of camped out here in different places and with different bands, practice houses off of Greenville Avenue when it was really cheap to live.
Yep.
And practice, and so just playing that scene in Deep Ellum and all over the place.
And this was when the
90s,
kind of mid 90s.
Yeah, 90s. Played everything from blues rock, kind of a metal band, rockabilly, straight ahead jazz. Used to play Sundays at the Balcony Club for a long time, doing straight ahead.
Yeah.
Kim Lenz for a little while, rockabilly artist who's just fantastic. Great act, and she was great to work with.
Yeah.
But just got to play a lot of different styles. I went to North Texas. Did nothing but music in the jazz school for a couple of years, and ended up graduating from University of Texas at Arlington. Great stops in both places. Got to play with a lot of great players.
UTA has and still does has a really great jazz program.
They do. It was. UNT gets a lot,
Sure.
all the
notice,
I mean,
they're the little sister for sure, but they're a great program.
I loved it. I went over there, and there were so many bands over at North Texas. You have to have the lab band credits and things like that. Found myself competing with some folks that were masters and doctoral candidates, and it was going to be a little while before I got out. So, but I looked at the program over at UTA. It had always been in my mind, and Bill Snodgrass was the director, and great lessons from him about music business and how the real world was for musicians. So,
have you been there in the last couple of years? I know they just did a whole big Russ Berger designed studio, and it's supposed to be gorgeous.
I have not seen that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be real nice.
That's great to hear. They're still doing it over there, and they have a history of putting out of graduating excellent musicians.
Yeah.
So cool. It's definitely some world class talent over there.
Yeah. So, so playing in Deep Ellum, playing in the blues scene, and then you kind of, when did you kind of work into to journalism, right?
Well, I started writing. I guess I had an article published in Bass Player magazine in the mid '90s.
Oh, cool!
And then I did transcriptions for a software company that I think is now still called TrueFire. They've rebranded.
Yeah.
I believe that's it. So I did a lot of transcriptions then. Wrote for a couple of bass magazines, and then, it was mainly just to I was interested in learning more about the artists that I liked, and sometimes getting assigned artists that were just the magazine, that was the assignment. So, but it was a lot of fun, just meeting different players in some cases, or just getting to talk and engage with them. And I basically from there kind of went more on the digital side, the digital media side. My writing then extended over to covering basically the growth of different aspects of digital media from the last couple decades, last 2.5 decades.
Yeah.
And
then
now
how
I'm
did you
writing a lot more?
Yeah, for sure. Well, then, let's talk about Buddy Magazine. Tell me the history of the magazine, because for those that don't know, and then tell how you ended up there.
Yeah. So Buddy was started in 1973 by let's just say it's a the. I'm trying to think of the best way to term. I guess from the left side, the counterculture.
Sure.
Leaders of Dallas, Stony Burns and several others. And there were several underground newspapers, one of them Dallas Notes, published at SMU. Stony was working with Dallas Notes. There was a change there, and he had started writing a lot of controversial things, pointed at local leaders, anybody with a suit, police,
Sure,
really poking the bear in Dallas. He ended up getting arrested for possession of about 1 joint's worth of stems and seeds, which at the time in Texas, you could get up to life in prison for possession of any amount.
Of any amount, wow.
Of any amount. And so the powers that be basically gave him 10 years and a day in the state penitentiary.
Uh-huh.
He was shipped down to Huntsville.
Wow.
And spent time about 2 weeks in the penitentiary. His cause became, this is over the top. He had celebrities like Hugh Hefner take up his cause, and it was written up in Time magazine. And then the governor stepped in at the time, Dolph Briscoe, and got him out of there. But nevertheless, he spent a couple weeks in the penitentiary for stems and seeds. So when he came back, the magazine was printed by his family. His father owned Allied Printing. And so all of these kind of counterculture magazines, poking the bear, were being printed, and his dad said, "No more of this. we're not gonna do this again."
Yeah.
So he had audience, and what he decided to do was to start a music magazine.
Okay.
So that same anti-Vietnam kind of crowd that was there, anti-establishment was the core of the So he started in 1973. It was printed in Deep Ellum, basically on the edge of Deep Ellum from the 1970s on for some time.
Do you know where? Like, is the building still there? Do you know where?
I am not sure. I think it might have gotten razed. It is on
imagine.
the southwest edge of Deep Ellum. It's really towards Good Latimer.
Yeah. So near like the Adam Hatz building and the bomb factory and all that.
Farther to the west, I think it would be the west.
Okay.
Past Elm and past Maine.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So published there for a long time.
Yeah.
And they just started producing, 1-2 issues a month for the longest time. And
and what was the initial goal of the magazine? Just to cover, Dallas music, Texas music, or just music?
It was Texas music.
It was always Texas.
It was a total stake in the ground.
Okay.
It was. I guess you could say against Rolling Stone, against Cream.
Yeah.
You had these two magazines that were named for their favorite acts, Cream and Rolling Stones, the Rolling Stones. But Stoney said, well, Texas is different.
Yeah.
We got the talent, and we have a different hero here, and it's Buddy Holly.
That's right.
And so the tribute was to Buddy, and still to this day is.
Yeah.
And it's continued on. Stoney was the publisher from 1973 to 1989. Ron McCowan, 1989 until 2019.
Yeah.
And then, actually, he stopped publishing because of the pandemic up to 2020.
Right.
And then I picked it back up about 3 years ago.
And Ron recently passed away, did he?
He did, yeah. He passed away September 5th.
Okay.
About 3 months ago.
What was his contribution to the magazine over the years?
So, huge contribution. He was there from day one. He was
Yeah.
a staff photographer from day one. He is, I think only recently people have started to appreciate his photography apart from the magazine because it was so intertwined.
Yeah.
He does a lot of black and white portraiture,
Yeah.
kind of capturing a lot of behind the scenes type photos. But he was there in the beginning. He was on site, he was embedded.
Yeah.
He was embedded in the scene and in every way, whether it was backstage, in front of the stage, riding along. He told me, he said, he committed the cardinal sin of journalism. He said, I got assigned to, cover Willie Nelson, and I ended up joining him,
Yeah.
So he did. He
Yeah.
was embedded with Willie Nelson for a long time. And that photographic history of Texas music is, I think, one of his greatest legacies. He did leave the photo archive to the magazine.
Oh, good.
So I've only reviewed maybe 1% to 2% of it. And
Wow.
it's a massive archive, probably over 40,000 images,
Wow.
negatives, contact sheets,
Yeah.
prints, on and on. It's going to take years to go through.
Sure.
But we're talking about, a history of artists that came through, major artists that he shot, Elvis, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Elton John, in
Yeah.
the 70s at really good times in their careers, as well as, the local artists that everybody knows around here, and sometimes state-known artists,
Yeah.
nationally known artists. They're all in the archive, but I would dare say it's one of the best documents of North Texas
Yeah.
culture and music culture that are around right now, especially in the 70s.
What do you think Buddy Magazine has meant to the Texas music scene over the last 30, 40 years?
When I talk to different artists, and I think about this myself, and you probably do it at some level, getting a write up and getting acknowledgement, it's a tough thing to do, especially in
Yeah.
print media.
There
And-
is something, I'll just add this. There is something different and special about seeing your name in a write up in print. I've been fortunate enough to have it in Buddy and in the Morning News and a couple other print. And there's just something special about going, picking it up, holding it in your hands, and seeing your picture there.
100%. It really is. There's something physical. The internet, social is
Yeah.
very ironically ephemeral.
Yeah.
It dissipates and dissipates algorithmically. It gets buried.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this with a lot of digital media. Once the format changed, well, all of a sudden that last layer
Yeah.
is gone unless you have the thing. You ever try pulling up an old DAT tape?
Yeah, sure.
Try to find a machine that plays right.
Right.
How much music is buried because of that one fact.
Yeah.
But with this, we've got physical archive. I would almost make the case that 70s, 80s, 90s music in print is better documented than the 2010s.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got to go looking for it. But if you want a record, you can pull this magazine up
Yeah.
and a physical copy of it. And but Ron had tried to encourage me not to do print, but I'm a digital guy.
Sure.
And growing up with this magazine and what it's meant to people,
Yeah.
it's meant a lot. Like I said, I talked to different artists who have, their first press
Yeah.
was in Buddy, and they just really appreciated the care that the editors took into making sure they got covered or whatever. And a lot of these artists became, this was when they were,
Yeah.
they remembered, I guess you
Absolutely.
could say, the favor of the acknowledgement early on, because as they got bigger, they realized what a gesture it was.
Yeah.
And we try to follow the same, and I say we have about 14, 15 different contributors,
Okay.
photographers, writers.
How many staff? Do you have any staffed writers, or are they all contributors?
I guess you could say contributors.
Okay.
Or I kind of look at it as a collective. We talk to folks that are very in touch with different parts of the music scene, have, their taste jives with what, what has traditionally gone on with the magazine. And so, we go by that, and we go by that taste and keep producing it. But yeah, that acknowledgement again, was the biggest thing. We saw it at Ron's memorial. Folks that started their careers 40 years ago were talking about how,
Yeah.
this was one of the best pieces of press they ever got.
Right. What are the plans for the future? I assume you're still planning on doing some print, but what are kind of the plans for the future of Buddy?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be more online, but the format is the same. The thing that's I think most interesting and unique about Buddy is the cover.
Yeah.
So, and it's one of the things, it's almost an island to itself. You don't have to go visit the website. You can see the cover, see who the artist is, see who we consider it, we're trying to honor an artist.
Right.
Right, for their contributions and their story. And so it's kind of a sharing of that, and traffic gets X amount, social gets X amount, but it's that cover traveling that actually gets the most, impressions. So again, obviously people can't see this,
Sure.
but I'm holding, one of the things we're doing is continuing to publish on the web with the cover format.
Uh-huh.
And then our May issue, I published basically the equivalent of 8 issues in one.
Okay.
So we took a lot of our web cover stories, and we took the full bleed covers within one single magazine.
Yeah.
32-page color version of the full color magazine. And it's just more of what people have always read Buddy for, is that main cover and the story inside.
I've kind of gotten this sense that, because like we've talked about, me holding the physical thing is such an important thing. And I guess I've always hoped, and maybe this is wishful thinking, but I've hoped that whatever the next generation that lives so much online, my hope is that they'll get tired of it. And I have a feeling that there will eventually be this craving for tangible, relatable experiences. Is that something you're hopeful for? Is that something you have maybe seen at all?
I'm very, very hopeful for that. And it goes beyond just consuming media.
Right.
I think it's the fact that we're getting sucked into the technological vortex.
Yeah.
So much that it is making people ill. Mm-hmm. And this is an area that I feel pretty strongly about. And watching, I think we have to.
Yeah.
I think it is necessary for our souls and consciousness to part from these devices, because we're, with the acceleration of AI in so many different areas, and what's going on, and all the attention focused in the device, that it's had a real impact on people.
Well, you see it with the rise of with vinyl, like with more and more people buying vinyl. I'm curious to see if that happens in the print journalism world as well, because you see, like, I feel like Rolling Stone's starting to do a little more print. Cream magazine is back, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're doing print yet, but I have a feeling that's something they would like to do. So I wonder if we kind of may see a resurgence in the print magazine, music magazine, in the near future.
It's a really good question. I can definitely speak to part of this. We have done for 50 years drops at the clubs and things like that, stacks of magazines. Of course, you go in around town.
Buddy's still free.
Buddy's still free.
Yeah.
We don't drop in as many places when we have a print issue, but we do drop in some, give a place to go to. I think a lot of people like the idea that it's being still in print. They like to think that, know that physical copy's out there, but they're still going online, or I can say that they don't pick up as many copies.
Yeah.
There's they see it there. It's the same thing. The Observer is out there.
Yeah.
And they still do print copies.
Yeah.
Not like it used to be. It used to be the internet.
Yeah.
Just like Buddy was at different times. But I would hope that would be the case. I think, it almost is kind of a wellness thing.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, I think handling physical media is important.
I just renewed. I actually rebought a subscription. I had one in high school and stuff, but I was missing holding the thing like we've talked about. So I actually renewed my subscription to Rolling Stone, and I don't know, there's something just special about having it in your hands.
I like my books. I've got my own library. I kept my CDs. I have, I bought more DVDs recently because, when I went through the pandemic, I found myself paying $4 for a Seinfeld episode. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. This is all, why don't I just go ahead and get the whole set? For
$5.
Every season for $10. So, but the other side of that, I'll say this, that, it's one other good reason for owning physical media is that you can we've gotten into this whole model of basically renting our music and renting our media. And when you buy a CD, right, or DVD or a CD or whatever else, you actually
It's yours.
own a copy of it. And you can keep, I'm not a lawyer, not making recommendations here,
Sure.
but part of the law is that you can have at least, it's been my understanding that you can have a digital backup copy of your own, music. So you're not paying over and over for, there's just a good, other good reasons for owning media.
Yeah.
I wonder though if, sort of digital natives who've grown up without physical media as much,
Right.
if there is a lack of sentimentality around it.
I wonder that as well, because like my kids, right, my daughter's 9, her whole life will exist on a device of some sort, and that's what I was talking about earlier. I'm curious to know if at a certain point there'll be that curiosity for the physical and the tangible. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that, but I'm curious.
Yeah, it's something that I'm trying to figure out as well. I have a primary vested interest in cracking this case. But as far as I know, I can say again, we've reversed the publishing process. I don't know of any other magazine except maybe, the Saturday Evening Post in the 50s would put this kind of compendium of covers together.
Yeah.
And again, we're publishing to the web first, and then it's like, okay, let's take the stories and do this combined
so cool.
document. And I think there is interest in that way. As a specialty publication, we gave away about 2,000 issues at the Dallas Guitar Show. I will say, here's an interesting thought. While the club pickup and that kind of thing is a little bit, can be tepid. There's some people really interested in at the guitar show.
Yeah.
Going in, everybody was grabbing a copy.
That's cool.
A lot of people, these were copies in hand, and you get sometimes 3 and 4 times pass around on a physical copy. So it was really good distribution on the issue. And I like the idea of coupling it with an event. So I'm interested in seeing, with a major festival or something like that, and getting the copies out that way. Because I do want these to get in hands and not, get stuck under the cigarette machine in the back of X, Y, or Z club.
Do y'all review shows at the magazine?
Yes. Yeah, we do.
How often?
It depends on the writer, actually.
Okay.
If we've got, again, operating as sort of a collective, and we let the writers, if they're really excited about something, they want to check it out and review it.
Yeah.
We talk about it and we set it up. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, it just depends on the show.
I've talked a lot on this podcast about just the effects of COVID on the music industry and on live music in particular, and just how it really did a number on it, obviously, and we're seeing we saw a big uptick in people wanting to go to shows once everything opened back up, but now it's kind of bottomed out or leveled out again. What have you seen in terms of COVID's effect and just the internet's effect on attendance at shows and the local scene and as it relates to the magazine?
Yeah, well, I hear you on that. There was definitely, I was one of those people ready to get back out to the clubs and go, and I did for a while. And then I think we obviously as a society has changed.
Sure. Yeah.
Not just in the way, I think we've changed in the way we interact with people. I think, I hear a lot of people say they just don't like to be around crowds as much.
Yeah.
They just, they're and that could be because of COVID. It could be because of other things,
right.
that are going on in the country right now. But I can tell you that the magazine, one thing that does affect live performances when we've published covers in advance of shows coming up.
Okay, yeah.
The awareness increases the interest.
Yeah.
And increases the audience at some of these venues. So we know for a fact this is, Buddy is making an impact in certain areas.
Yeah.
And it varies from artist to artist and story to story, but we do know it's working. So I'm very proud of that,
Absolutely.
in terms of helping, we can't boil the ocean and get everybody out to every show, but we can certainly focus on certain things that we think will be of interest.
Well, when you talk about the health of a local scene, a health of the local it takes the whole ecosystem. So it's not, it takes the publications like Buddy, like The Observer, and it takes the venue. It takes everybody to contribute to the health of a local scene. I mean, how do you see Buddy? In what ways is Buddy contributing to the health of the not just the local scene but the Texas scene?
Yeah, well, we mainly focus on Texas artists, and artists that pay attention or have had a history with coming to Texas.
Sure.
We're interviewing. Next cover is going to be on Andy Summers of the Police.
Oh, cool.
Sat down with us. Sat down with Ian Saint.
Yeah.
Last month.
Was that when he was doing the wasn't he like a guest lecturer at SMU?
He might have been guest lecturer, and I believe it was a performance as well.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, and we've got actually photography from a previous performance at the Kessler.
Okay, cool.
Great photography from Andrew Sherman. I got off the topic a little bit. The question was about serving. Okay, so
serving the local scene.
Serving the local scene. I think one of the things that has been interesting to me as I've had the magazine and talked to a lot of different artists and different genres here is how much we're in sort of a filter bubble. Each one, there could be the amazing blues rock scene and guitar scene up in McKinney with what Maylee Thomas Fuller and George Fuller are doing, and that could be separate from the Freeman scene that's going on. The Freeman, this amazing scene going on there. Just the music is absolutely top notch.
Yeah,
never disappointed. Not disappointed, but literally, see something incredible every night
just
you
about
go
every
there.
night, yeah.
At least, yeah. So I think it's been sort of cross-pollinating those scenes a little bit because I'll just flat out, hey, have you heard of so-and-so? Or, no, I've never heard. You should know them. You should really know them.
Yeah.
They're out playing with XYZ artists, in front of 50,000 people and you're this area, and you're doing it over here. And there's just all kinds of, and sort of connecting those types of things, I think, has been very interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about Buddy is you shine lights, like you're talking about the artists that go out and play with, or go out and play these massive venues with these massive art. Somebody like Andy Timmons, right? That you were talking about the Guitar Sanctuary thing, and or the guys that play at the Freeman, right? Like, just it's incredible. That's one of the things I love about Buddy is shining the light on some of those players.
Buddy's always been very eclectic. It tends to get thought of as strictly Americana, blues, rock, and blues. But, Buddy was one of the first magazines to cover Erykah Badu, Norah Jones.
Well, yeah.
A lot of great artists got their first ink there, and even going on, when Colleen Gilson was an editor in the 90s and still writes. Mm-hmm. She brought a lot more metal into.
Yeah, that's cool.
Definitely. It's a huge, it's a huge thing here in Texas, and it's made a worldwide cultural impact.
Yeah, for sure.
Here,
Well, I mean, you talk bands like Pantera that got their start here, and such a huge impact.
Absolutely, and there's a ton of other great bands as well. Obviously, Pantera still playing stadiums. With the new lineup. There was Rigor Mortis.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I still think that, along the topic of strangest gig, I would say it was probably the strangest I've ever seen in my life. Was seeing Rigor Mortis play at the Theater Gallery in, I guess, the late '80s. But there's another band. We covered a guitarist by the name of Blake Ibanez with Power Trip and Fugitive, and we covered him about a year and 4 or 5 months ago for Fugitive because his band's great. I love real heavy metal, particularly thrash. I'm really into it. Like I said, I'm eclectic. I'll go from Willie Nelson to Rigor Mortis to whatever else, but just amazing work that Power Trip and also Fugitive was doing. So we were covering for Fugitive, and Andrew, our writer, had kind of said, so when you get in Power, any thoughts about getting Power Trip?
Yeah.
And Power Trip, after a couple months after that came out, they started to reform and played a show. And
that's great.
Now the other thing is they're opening for Pantera in Europe.
Yeah.
So they jumped from playing club gigs here to, just watching those kind of stories
that's cool.
happen, and and how fast things move,
For sure.
is fascinating about this scene.
Well, let's get into it now. You've been a bass player for a long time. You've now, on the other side, on another side of the industry as an editor. Tell me about the strangest gig you've ever played or been a part of or covered or seen.
Yeah, I'll go back to that Rigor Mortis show because I've seen and played a lot of shows.
Yeah.
This one show in particular, me and my friends and my brothers we had gone out to some pasture land going fishing, in the middle of the summer in Texas. Very hot. We were all sunburned to a crisp.
Yeah.
And just thought it'd be a great idea to go see Rigor Mortis that night.
And jump in the pit. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were whipped. So we get into the theater gallery, and again, we're underage, basically underage. We kind of
Was it an all ages show, or did y'all just
no?
get it?
I think it was 18 and older. We might have been. We had to probably were 18, at least 18, to get into that. But there were two little side balconies on the theater gallery that held about 6-7 people.
Yeah.
With chairs. It was going to be a wild, crazy pit. So we went to the top and got in those balconies, and we were whipped. We were just looking over and exhausted. And so we watched the whole pit go. It was just extremely violent.
Yeah.
Rigor Mortis was the most fearsome band I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Anywhere. I mean, you legit feared the band. Your safety was at risk.
Yeah.
Not just from the whole situation.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this: I had met some of the guys in the band after that, Bruce Corbett and other, just super nice.
Yeah.
But the projection here, you have these guys that are wanting to scare you.
Yeah.
And they're showing this, hardcore horror movies. I don't know how to reference it, but just extremely gory movies in the background, and the music was just ferocious.
Sure.
And I guess again, getting to that strange part. So Mike, the guitar player's amp blew up.
Oh no.
And people got everything's already about to explode.
Yeah.
And then that's when the fight started breaking out. We were safe,
relatively, yeah. 'Cause you're in
looking
the
down on
balcony.
this, and then a fire started to break out.
Oh no.
There was smoke coming from somewhere. The music had stopped. People were angry. They started pummeling and fighting each other. We looked across the other balcony, and somebody had pushed. It was just total mayhem.
Yeah.
And somebody from the other balcony had pushed a cooler full of ice over the top, and we watched it hit this girl on the head and knocked her out cold. And then we didn't see where it was coming from, but somebody grabbed her leg, and you just seen her being drug off somewhere. And then so the smoke is billowing. The fight it's almost a total riot.
Yeah.
Police had come in, and we weren't getting down. Police are called. You see the flashlights come through the smoke.
Yeah.
And all this chaos. They shine the flashlight. I'll never forget this, watching two uniformed police officers shine through it and say, "Okay, let's get out of here. Yeah. This is crazy. We need backup."
Too much for us. Yeah.
We need backup. But I'm not sure how we got out of that. But it was, again, it's hard to above and beyond any act.
Yeah.
I saw, we saw Suicidal Tendencies and
Yeah.
Circle Jerks and The Exploited and all these, really hardcore bands back in the day.
Yeah.
None of them touched
That's crazy.
this band for the ferocity. It was just absolutely phenomenal.
That's crazy. I love that.
I've talked about it, I guess there's probably a couple hundred people there, and occasionally,
Yeah, because Theater Gallery wasn't a huge venue.
It wasn't. It's basically as a warehouse.
Yeah.
They pack them in.
Yeah, I've had Jeffrey Lyles, a friend of mine, on who used to book for the Theater Gallery. So he told a few pretty awesome stories.
Indeed, I know he managed Rigor Mortis. And helped get them signed.
Yeah,
and I'll be out there when I'm ever inspired to talk, about a funny gig story online or whatever it comes up. Everybody's like, "Okay, that sounds great, Rob," but Jeff will always be there to, be the one to like it because he knows.
Absolutely.
He knows
absolutely.
what it was like.
Does. Well, what about as a magazine editor? What is it like for you as someone who's, trying to interview bands and pull stuff out of them that is engaging? And, have you had any, contrarians out there that have been just unwilling to talk, or has everybody been pretty well, cordial and fun to work with?
That's the basic ingredient for getting an interview done.
Yeah.
Is you got to be, able to talk at some level.
Yeah.
And it's fine. Some people aren't. It's okay. But you can't get an interview unless
there's nothing to print if there's nothing said.
Got to reciprocate. So, it's not a psychology test where we're just going to write what we think about,
Right.
different reactions. So, I think that, being open and really engaged and passionate about what, those that are passionate about what they're doing are usually the best interviews.
Sure.
There have been some that just didn't get off the ground. It's like, we're talking, trying to talk with them. What angle can we come from here?
Sure, yeah.
It's okay. We just go on to the next artist. The current cover story is with Tim Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
We just published that story last night.
Yeah.
Tim is sort of a original Deep Ellum, I guess you could say founder or mover, in the early days, and has had a very storied career as a tech futurist and leader in Silicon Valley and other places. And Tim was a great interview. It's the longest interview we've published.
Okay.
It's about 11,000 words.
Wow.
Typical conversation, a long interview might be, 2,000 to 3,000 words.
Wow.
But we had a really extensive talk about music and artificial intelligence,
Okay.
and kind of where it's going and how to think about it. And this is one of the, the advent of AI is really on par with, electricity.
Yeah.
In terms of where we're going. It's going to reshape our future, not just musicians, but a lot of
Yeah.
other things, a lot of aspects of our life. And Tim has been, he's not new to the topic. He's actually a Harvard fellow now and works
Wow.
with the AI program for executives there.
Yeah.
And so he has been studying this for a very long time. It's not new. He said basically since about 2010. But we had a great conversation. It was just a lot of reciprocation back and forth. And, he's a good storyteller as well. Yeah. He can explain certain things and take one topic and then tell you one layer and then ABC and then 1, 2, 3 below that. And
That's
it's
cool.
It's an extremely informative article, I think, for musicians and people who want to know where some of the things are going
Yeah.
with AI and what it means to them.
Yeah, it's crazy. AI is nuts. There was that report, I don't know if it was a year or so ago, about Sports Illustrated using some AI to write some of their articles. Have you seen that, like on the music magazine front at all?
I've seen some. Yeah, I don't use it to
Yeah.
write. I've pulled backgrounds and things like that. It's great because in our content management system, I can pull up, write a prompt
Yeah.
as I'm writing a post and say, give me the background on this artist.
Yeah.
2 or 3 paragraphs. Boom, writes just standard factual copy, and it's usually very accurate. But I don't use it very often because we do focus more on
Sure.
the human thinking about this. We think this is a differentiator.
Yeah.
Are other music sites using it? Yes, and I think there are going to be. We're going to see more dry, kind of newswire type stuff written that way. I don't think it's good for really thinking or developing.
Right, a story.
AI is predictive.
Yeah.
It's predictive. It's not doesn't have the true intelligence
Yeah.
to think and combine concepts, especially in as esoteric of concept as music and art.
Right, yeah.
Very, very nuanced. It can spout the textbook things, but it can't get in the deeper elements, things like that we're discussing here.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to a young band that's just starting out and they're looking to get coverage? What things would they need in place to be able to pop up on your radar as editor of Buddy Magazine?
Yeah, for a new band, I'll tell you, we don't really look as much at social footprint as.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I look for artists that are where the quality. In fact, if the quality exceeds in the proportion of quality to the number of social following is disproportionate, I will actually lean more towards them.
Okay.
Because if they're that good, but there's, whereas a lot of other places are looking for, if you got the big following, we're going to go with that. Yeah. Not the case.
Yeah.
I've got several artists actually in mind right now. Not even a huge following, but I think that the music is frankly deserves mass appeal.
Do you want to mention
or is
some?
On par with, what's that?
Do you want to mention some?
I'll mention one.
Sure.
An artist in Austin, well known in Austin, but the plays on Spotify are not there. Ray Prim.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of him.
I just love it. Very unique, very original, blends different styles. But some of these amazing songs that I think are on par with others in the millions of streams have like 2,000. Yeah. 1 or 2,000 plays, and I just think it's a crime. So yeah. So Ray Prim is somebody who's definitely on my radar right now.
That's cool.
And there are again many others, that just where there's that disproportionate level. But I would say just
is that unique to Buddy Magazine? Do you think most?
Probably so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say no. I shouldn't say that. Because a lot of the writers that I know are very passionate about certain artists,
right.
And when that passion is there, they cover who they want. They're looking at. So I think, publication-wise, though, bigger publications, of course, there's going to be a balance. Of
right.
Trying to find that.
The clicks,
the clicks and the and artists that'll bring traffic to them. They're looking for that, but. For us, it's more about that's where we play. We're trying to give covers to artists who might not get them elsewhere, but are absolutely deserving. And having good video or just good music is the start.
Yeah.
Photographs can help.
Yeah.
But not always. We do have great photographers, and we like to use our own photography whenever possible. So, but I think just having the first, having the good music. The great music is the best way to start.
What a novel concept.
Yeah, for real.
Tell me about your dream gig, and that can mean whatever it means to you. Either when you're playing, watching, covering, whatever that means to you.
This is a great question, and I had actually, I don't know why I thought about this a couple of years ago, but can I give a few?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I would say after watching the documentary on Elvis in the 70s in Vegas, that first, great documentary. But the vibe in that room just seemed so mad. I don't know if it's, whether me playing or just watching. I don't know. But that would certainly be one show I would like to have seen.
Do you think it was something about Vegas in the 70s at that particular time, or do you think it's just Vegas in general?
I think it was the whole coalescing of a lot of things. Elvis in that period.
Yeah.
The music he was playing at the time.
The
Suspicious Minds. The band. Phenomenal band. The energy in the room, the energy he brought to the stage, the energy that the crowd had in adoration of him. I think all those elements made it just a really powerful room.
Yeah,
and a powerful stage. Yeah, I got to throw this one in because our associate editor, Elaine McAfee Bender, we did this piece about a year ago on Beatlemania in Texas, 64 to 65. Yeah. This is actually a picture we got from photographer Joseph Toonsey, and we licensed for the cover, and it's behind. We wanted to make this about the crowd, about the audience. So we got this great shot of their Houston show on the first tour. This is one of my favorite articles of all time.
That's great.
In Buddy, at my tenure in particular. Elaine made it so palpable what it was like. Yeah. And she had, a lot of people, I talked to a lot of people who've, met or played with artists of the time, some of the biggest ones. But I don't think anybody's really touched this story of, hanging out with the Mop Tops in 64, 60, when they're on this, this mythical tour, right? And the sound wasn't great.
Of course,
but it was just kind of, hard to imagine how they, the lack of sound system that was there that did not project them over the crowd or the audience noise. But I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a hell of a show.
Absolutely.
Understatement, maybe of of the day for me at least.
For sure.
Yeah.
Where would they have played in Dallas and Fort Worth? Did they play one of the convention centers in Fort Worth?
They played. I don't think it was the convention center, but they played. They played the Dallas Memorial Auditorium, I think, which was the auditorium near City Hall now. I think it's the Kay Bailey Hutchison.
Yeah.
And so that would have been the venue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I want to say they played the State Fair one time as well, but I may be making that up. That would have been a hell of a show.
Indeed. Just what a time, the cultural shot heard around the world, so to speak, happening right then, happening in Texas. I think there were only 20 cities on one of those tours.
Yeah.
22 cities. And just what an amazing event that would have been.
Yeah, to see a band that was just so a part of the zeitgeist of America. They were everywhere, and everybody either loved them or didn't want anything to do with them, right? But you couldn't avoid them. To be able to be at a show of that magnitude.
Totally. And over the last couple of years, through a couple of documentaries, one's called, I think it's called Tina Go-Go, and it's about the Fort Worth music scene, post British invasion, post Beatles, Ed Sullivan. And then there's the Vaughan Brothers documentary by former Buddy editor Kirby Warnock, and actually just aired on PBS last weekend, 2 weeks ago. And those two documentaries really lay out the story of the Beatles and British invasion explosion of bands in both Fort Worth and Dallas, and started to tie that in even with particularly the Oak Cliff set that was influenced by the Beatles, but also by Freddie King and other local blues artists. And what's amazing to me is that, again, this happened 60 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of those then kids are now still playing.
Yeah.
They form one of the biggest layers of the music scene to this day.
Yeah.
To this day in North Texas. They're still out playing. They're still playing blues or blues rock or different styles, but they all got that bug back in 63 and 64. A lot of them did. Some of them that were picked the bug up, a few years later, but I could cite over and over and over again the number of artists that came out of that one event.
Sure. Well, Rob, this has been a really, really fun conversation. Thanks for coming out. And what's next for Buddy Magazine?
We're going to keep publishing our online stories. We're going to keep looking for good stories and deserving artists, and just keep showing up doing that.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Great. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, really fun.
All right, there he goes. Big thanks to Rob Garner for coming on the podcast. Y'all, please be sure to check him out with Tutu Jones. And please be sure to pick up a copy of Buddy Magazine wherever you find them. Check out their website and read the articles. And support local print journalism. They are vital to the health of the scene. We thank them for that. Again, I am Chris J. Norwood, and I want to thank you for listening to the Strangest Gig podcast. And until next time, just remember, a gig's a gig, right?